Hi, I'm Allison Zmuda, and I am so glad Chris Emdin is joining us. Emdin, okay, let's try this again.
No worries.
Hi, I'm Allison Zmuda, and so thrilled to have Chris joining us one more time to talk about the power of his latest book. Chris, give us a quick plug for the book title and where you want folks to buy it.
Yes, the book is STEM, STEAM, Make Dream, Reimagining the Culture of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. It's available wherever books are sold. Go online and Google STEM, STEAM, Make Dream, and it should pop up.
Fantastic. So this third topic, Chris, that we're going to talk about is the power of language in STEM. Mm-hmm. So we've talked first, let's talk a little bit about science and math as a language, and then let's get the A in a minute, all right? So as we're starting to think about the language of science and mathematics and the power of that being a rigorous experience, but at the same time, an accessible one. So can you talk about how you approach that, not just in the classroom, but also in the pedagogy and the work you've done since then?
Yeah, I write about this in the book. I have a firm belief that science and math are not just academic subjects, but they are languages that we want to help young folks to be fluent in. And this draws a lot from the work of Bryan A. professor at Stanford, a really good friend of mine. And we've had long conversations about ways to get young people to just get into STEM. Mm-hmm. And what we discuss oftentimes is that the language of STEM is off-putting. So there's no entry point. And you have to have a belief system that, like a foreign language, you're only able to gain fluency by spending time in the language or around and with people who are speaking it, right? If I don't speak Spanish, I can learn Spanish by somebody teaching it to me. But my fluency comes when I get to be in an immersive experience with other folks who are speaking it, and then the fluency develops over time. And I think science and math are languages, and we must teach them like that. And we must also understand the ways that the existing language is off-putting for young people. I'll give you a quick example. I think I may have wrote about this in a book. I once worked with a bunch of young folks who I was told to teach physics to, and they were ninth graders who had not done well in algebra prior to. And so I've got these kids and everybody's like, you're going to teach physics to ninth graders who have not learned algebra and basic math? You're crazy. And I said, I'll do it anyway. and we had an exam that we had to give them at the end of the academic year that they needed to pass to show that they learned physics. And so I gave the kids the exam on the first day of school. And as was expected, because they've not learned this before, they didn't do so well. And so my next thing I did was I said, guys, highlight or underline all of the words you don't understand. And they did that. And then I proceeded to teach English, not physics. I decided to teach all the words like analyze and decipher and modulate. And so we just taught the words. And once they learned the basic words, without learning the science concept, the science references, we gave the exam again, and their test scores jumped at least 25 points each. So it wasn't about the science yet. It was just about the vocabulary. Yeah. Then once they understood the vocabulary, and they saw their test goes up, they had this sort of self-efficacy and identity increase. Wait, I know these words now, and I got 25 more points than I did last time. I must be good in physics. Now, all of a sudden, when I'm presenting basic conceptual physics to them, their interest is increased and their language is more sophisticated. And so I make the argument that if you increase the sophistication of the language and the language acquisition, and you teach the science content like it is a language, and then you work with young folks to be more fluent over time, they actually become more scientifically inclined.
Yes.
And so for me, it's recognizing it's just words. And then once you learn the words, you learn the concepts behind the words. Yep. And then when you learn the concept behind the words, you feel like you understand this stuff, then you become more fluent over time. And then you develop the sophistication of your language, right? Some folks speak English and just can't use advanced and complex words because they don't use those words every day.
Right.
But the more you use the words and the more you're forced to be able to make sense of the world through your words, there's an increased sophistication in your language. And I'd make the argument is increased rigor in your science content acquisition.
Yes. Well, it's also fascinating too, because you can actually grow fluency in the language, but you're also describing that you don't do that in a traditional classroom setting alone, right? So it's not just, okay, let's start learning, analyze, and investigate. we're also starting to say, and we're not only going to learn those words, we're going to actually do those words. We're applying that. So I think some of the stories that you described, even of your younger days when you were first walking into that biology lecture hall.
That's right.
You know what I mean? It's like, that's not the time only to learn the language of biology. Where it started to come alive is in the joyful hum that you saw in the lab on the first day, where you started to see people not only engrossed in their work, but actually just feeling that joy and that energy that comes from the work.
And just doing. And what I want, people who are listening and folks who read the book, they'll get it if they read the book, is to understand that this leads, that's because folks, they draw conclusions based on these conversations that they may perceive that this is about sacrificing academic rigor. And I always want to remind folks, no, this is about reaching and surpassing. Like, rigor is not rigor mortis. It doesn't have to look like death, feel boring, and be a unitary exercise that you're going on your own for it to be academically rigorous. I would argue that the latter, the opposite is actually the case, right? The more I'm really posing questions, working with people, asking questions, trying to find answers, up all night because I'm enthusiastic about it, is when the academic rigor is reached. And so you don't get the rigor by boring kids to death. You get the rigor by developing a language in community and have them feel a motivation to want to delve into the interrogation processes that are necessary for success in science and math.
Well, and the cool part about this is that rigor comes from the complexity of how you're approaching a problem, how you're sort of thinking through and tinkering to develop a revised prototype. That's the power of rigor that we're interested in. And so the language of science and mathematics is about the fluency to make sense of the complexity. And to me, that's sort of the heart of what you were saying in the book, but that's the heart of curriculum design anyway, that it's that application, the conceptual foundation and the fluency. One Allison, doesn't sort of...
You about to make me give you a hug through the Zoom, man. It's about the application. Right. There's so many times where I, will meet with a young person who's taken all the AP courses. On paper, they look like they're just like the kid. And then you ask that child to apply what they've learned and they're stuck and they're lost. And it's the most heartbreaking thing because this person really believes that they are prepped for success. And when in reality, when they get into that lab, it doesn't catch up because they've never learned to be fluent. They've only learned to memorize.